Grandma. Blanche. Blanche Jordan Fussell. Okay. First of all, where and when were you born?
Where? In Katy.
Where in Katy?
About 8.5 miles out in the country. In June the 16th, 1918.
Ooh. Okay, so that's how you got to Katy. How did your parents get to Katy?
They came from Oklahoma here on the very first old railroad that was south of town, and they came here, and my father's father was here. The Jordans were here. They had came down years ago. And then they came here and settled and started farming rice.
Well, is that what he did here all his life?
Yes, he was the rice farmer. He pioneered the rice farming business here and was a rice farmer until he died.
That's your father?
My father.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you remember anything about your family, like your grandparents or anything?
Only that my grandfather had a white beard and white hair. He died when I was real young, and that's all I can remember of that too. And my other grandfather lived in Oklahoma. I saw him very seldom.
Okay.
And he had come from Germany to Oklahoma, but he never lived here.
Okay. What about your grandmothers?
They were dead.
Both of them?
Yes. I did not know my grandmothers at all.
Okay, well, were there any unusual circumstances about your birth? I mean, was it out in the house in the country or what?
Yes. Old house out in the country where they didn't have running water or any facilities that were convenient. My father came into town to get the doctor in horse and buggy, and by the time he got back, well, I was well on the way. The doctor was late getting there. Mrs. May Kemp, who is still alive here and is, in her late 80s probably, helped deliver me. And her daughter and I are real good friends. We were born a month apart out on the prairie. Yes.
Well, what do you remember, like your first memories of Katy?
Getting to go to town once a month maybe, and on a horse and buggy, and getting some hard candy, which at Mr. Raleigh Robinson's store that was in Katy here. At that time, I think that was the only store here that I can remember when I was real little.
That was your, like, Sunday treat to go into town?
Well, it was not on Sunday, but it was a treat to get to go to town. You didn't get to go to town often. It was too far. The roads, there were no roads. There were just trails then. There were no designated roads coming in to town. And so it was like an all-day trip to town. And that's where you met people that you didn't see often because they came into town. It was a Saturday town, and you usually came in on Saturdays, and you brought your butter and eggs and cream and exchanged it for groceries that you needed. And flour and sugar was bought in 100-pound sacks, not in 5 pounds that you could run to the store every little bit. I mean, once or 2 or 3 times a day. Yes, you didn't do that. Potatoes were bought the same way. If you didn't raise them, well, they were bought the same way in 100-pound sacks. Everything that you did get from the grocery stores was in big quantity because you didn't go in often. But when you did, it was a big deal to get to go to town. It was like getting all dressed up to go into Houston. Well, it was getting all dressed up to go into Katy.
Well, was Houston there at the time?
Yes, Houston was there, but I don't ever recall going to Houston until I became a teenager, probably. In my teens, probably.
Well, What'd y'all do about church or whatever? Did y'all go to church?
The churches were here. The Baptist church was here. The Methodist church was here.
But did
at that
you
time.
come into town to go to churches on Sunday?
Well, my parents were German Lutherans. They did not have a Lutheran church here. And so the neighbors that were Lutherans sort of gathered at people's houses and had sort of like a Wednesday night meeting. Then eventually the first Lutheran church, we had a visiting pastor who serviced out of Houston, Katy one Sunday and Patterson the next Sunday. And then he would come to your house for lunch on Sundays. And first church that they organized here was held in the old school auditorium. That's how they started it, and then eventually they got enough money together to buy it.
Well, why are you Methodist if your parents started out German Lutheran?
Very interesting story. Garden, your grandpa was a Baptist, and I was a Lutheran, and every Sunday we took turns going. We went to the Baptist church one Sunday, and we went to the Lutheran church one Sunday. And I didn't like the Baptist if he didn't like the Lutheran. So after Dwayne was born, we continued to do this way. And one morning we were going to church and got right into the center of town and said, I don't want to go to the Baptist church. And he said, I don't want to go to the Lutheran church. And Dwayne said, I wish you all would make up your mind. My shoes are hurting me. We were the closest to the Methodist church, so we stopped at the Methodist church, and that's how we became Methodists. That is the true story, though. I've always thought that was a real funny way to get to be a Methodist.
Well, what did you do your early childhood for fun? I mean, I know we watched TV and
yes,
stuff.
We had hay rides. On Sunday afternoon, all the people out in the country, what we called out in the country, would get together and go visiting. And all us kids would either play ball or play in the haylofts or just go down the creek. And there were a whole bunch of kids out in the country, which were like on maybe every mile or two there was a house at that time. We went to the old Stockton school. I went there until they consolidated with Katy and moved us all into Katy school. We had from the 1st to the 7th grade in the Stockton school. My brothers went to school there.
Well, what was it like? I mean,
well, we had one teacher, and she taught all 7 grades.
Well, was it easy or was it hard? Or?
Well, you just had a certain amount of time for your class, and then she just sort of rotated through the 7th grade. So we were all together into the 7th grade. We had outhouses and water buckets and a big iron stove or a cast iron stove to get the heat by. We walked to school. Now laugh.
How far?
Well, at one time it was about a mile. One time it was about 2.5 miles. But usually somebody in a wagon would be going back and forth from the fields or something, and we'd catch a ride on the back of the wagon and ride home, which was a lot of fun. We usually got in trouble because we had to cross a creek going home, and we played a little bit longer at the creek than we should. And
well, what was it like being the only girl?
Well, you didn't play with dolls. you grew up learning how to ride horses and be what was considered then a tomboy. You wore blue jeans still then.
Oh, y'all were allowed to wear blue jeans?
Not in schools, of course, but you had a Sunday dress and a everyday dress, and you wore jeans most of the time because you rode horses. You rode a horse to get the mail down at the corner, which was maybe a mile and a half away. And if you wanted to come in town on Sunday afternoon as we got older, we had to ride horses into town. We used to have horse races and get in trouble running the horses when we weren't supposed to.
So did you help your father with anything with the rice farming or anything like that? Or did
Just
you?
help Mother with the cooking, which we cook for like 20 to 25 people 3 times a day during harvest. So when you came in from school in the evening, well, you met a tub full of dishes waiting for you, and you washed them and dried them and put them back on the great big harvest tables for the next morning's meal. So at night you prepared your meal for morning, and as soon as morning was over, well, you prepared your meal to take to the field.
So cooking all day, huh?
Yeah, it was cooking all day, and yet we had time to wash on the washboard. We didn't have a wash machine. Wash on the washboard, hang up the wash, take it in when you got home. Things were really complicated, and they were real hard. A lot of people say they'd like to go back to the old times, but I'll take the modern times. For a long time, we didn't even have a bathroom in our house. You know, we had a number 3 wash tub, which got us all clean on Saturday night, but it was quite different. There was no air conditioning. We did not have any lights until, probably I was 10 years old, I guess, and we got carbide lights. They were some kind of a gas type of light. And then later on, we were one of the first to get electricity out of the farm, and it was just a hanging bulb that you got to pull, and it was a fun thing because we had lamps all the time. A center table that was what was called the center table. It was set in the middle of the floor, and the lamp was on it. They were the old Aladdin lamps, and we didn't have any gas. We were one of the first to have butane out on the farm, and got butane lights and stove. But we used to cook on an old wood stove, and our job was to bring the wood in. If we forgot it, we got up earlier the next morning to go out and get it and get.
Well, how early did you get up?
Well, when we had to come into school, well, we usually had to get up around 4:30, and the buses came real early because the roads were real bad, and we always wanted the bus to slide off in the ditch so we wouldn't have to go to school early and get to school late. Often it did, because the roads were not good. They were old country roads, and a lot of times there was water all the way into town that the bus would have to go through, which was fun for us because we thought we'd be late for class, you know. It was a fun deal. But I can't think of anything else.
Well, when did you and Papa meet?
In high school. We went to school together, and we started going together in high school, and we eventually married the year after we got out of high school. And we've been married 48 years.
Well,
We have lived here 48 years.
This house?
In this house. This is one of the oldest houses in Katy. The original 4 rooms of this house is real old. It was built by great grandpa Freeman, I believe, who is one of the first settlers that came to Katy. There were 3 of these houses that were built alike. There's still one standing that has the same roof as this one did, and that's the Garber Short house over there. Still has the same thick roof in it.
Well, what was your life after you married Grandpa? What was it like? I mean,
What do you mean?
well, was it still cooking all day? And
No.
did you go to work?
Yeah, no. I didn't work. I kept house. I washed. I ironed. I cooked. And it was hard to learn how to cook after you first married because you're so used to cooking for a great big family that you made great big pans of fried potatoes and great big pans of gravy, and everything was in big quantities. You had to learn to cook for 2, which is real hard. And then along came 3, you know. And then 4, and then
And on and on and on.
on and on and on.
Okay, what did you and Papa do after y'all got married for like entertainment or something? Did y'all go to a movie or? was
Had
it-
people over. We had more friends and time for friends then because television wasn't here. Radios were not here. We didn't have a radio at that time.
What about cars? Did y'all have cars?
We had a car, such as it was. But
Good call.
we visited a lot. We played a lot of 42. We played a lot of cards. We didn't know about spades then, but we did. It was really you could have time for friends. You had time to go see people, and our kids grew up seeing other kids, being with other kids, playing with other kids, creative children, not somebody to tell you, go play outdoors, go do something, and you always say, we're bored. They didn't have time to be bored. They played on the creeks and they played out in the fields and just had time for one another. We don't have that kind of time now, or we don't take it.
Well, what kind of development was Katy in? I mean, was it developing as a town, or was it still rural area?
It was still rural. When we first came here, we didn't even have lights here. And we didn't have a telephone. This was the end, after they put the electricity in, this was the end of the line right here in our house. The land across the road was rice field. That was all rice field. There was no development whatever there. There was no development out on the prairie. We called it out on the prairie where we lived because there were town people and there were the prairie people. We were the prairie people. But there wasn't anything. Katy was a very small town. It was a very close town. Everybody knew everybody else, and most everybody was kin somehow or other. It was just a real small town. Everybody was concerned about everybody. You know, if there was an illness, everybody got over to their house to help out in any way they could. If they needed wood chopped or farming done, or somebody helped them out if there was trouble.
Well, was it always that neighborly feeling, that friendliness, or were there maybe one or two bad apples in there?
No, it was always a real close town. In fact, as Humble, or which is now Exxon, came in, they always thought that Katy was rather clannish because we were so close. Everybody was so close. Everybody was concerned about everybody else. There were real good people that came in, and there were some real good friends of ours now that were there. But we were such a close town and had helped one another so many years that we were all like, everybody called everybody aunt and uncle, whether you were kin or not. It was Aunt Ruby and Uncle Dean, or Aunt Blanche and Uncle Gordon, and we weren't kin. Everybody wondered how you were kin to somebody else, but that was the closeness of the town. Everybody became aunt and uncle to everybody's children, or to the adults. If they were older, well, it was an aunt, or an uncle.
Well, what did y'all do on birthdays and stuff? How'd y'all celebrate that?
Well, we always got together. Our families did and still do try to get together on everybody's birthday. And it wasn't necessarily presents. Maybe at that time there couldn't afford presents. The town itself was not a real wealthy town, but it was a fun town, I think, and everybody seemed to be interested in everybody else. But on birthdays, we did get together. We had birthday cakes just like anybody else, and they weren't out of a box because there wasn't anything about box cakes then. I mean, they really weren't out of a box. You made it from scratch.
Well, what about Christmas?
We all still had Christmas together, and we all seemed to, and anybody that they thought was going to be alone at Christmas was welcome to come to one another's houses. It was just getting together. Mostly it was fruit and maybe one gift at Christmas time, and candy. And my mother did make divinity candy. That's how I got started making divinity candy. She made it at Christmas. That was a treat at Christmas time. And fruit cake. But everybody got together, and most of this stuff was made. A lot of things were handmade, like doll beds and things like that. They were homemade things. They were not store-bought kind of things. They were made. Little doll dresses and things like that, be made. In fact, I still have the bed that a man made that my mother had him make that was awful over there. And I've had it all these years. But it was just plain country. But they were good people, and everybody was concerned about everybody else. There was no classes of people. They were not rated as number ones or twos or threes. They were just ordinary. Other than we considered ourselves the prairie kids and the town kids, but we all were close.
Well, was there any, what's considered a minority state? Were there any, foreigners in Katy at that time?
The only ones that were here probably at that time were the Guzmans, and Mr. Guzman worked for the railroad company on the railroad, and Katy worked for it. But they were the only ones at that time. Of course, there were the Negroes that were over on the other side of the tracks. They never came over on our side of the tracks, but they were over on the other side of the tracks. They were good people. Still, some of them still are real good friends. I mean, they worked for our families for years. And if a Negro worked for your family, it was like he worked there all the time. I mean, he was just like part of the family. Just worked year in and year out, year round. He worked for you or worked for that family. He became a part of the family as far as, maybe he worked for 30 or 40 years for one family.
Well, what has made you stay in Katy so long?
That's a good question. It's just my home. I was born here. I have no desire to leave. I'm not happy with Katy like it is now. Because it is grown so that the small town atmosphere is gone. There is, it's just not here like it was. The time is just not here. I mean, people don't have the time that they have. I don't know whether they don't have it or they don't take it or it is a struggle for existence now. That it takes so much time for everything. We don't have time to visit. Television has done a lot of that. People hurry home instead of going over to have coffee with somebody. They hurry home to catch the 6 o'clock news or a favorite program or something that they'd like to see. So they don't have time for it. And you kids growing up have centered your whole life around television. There wasn't anything when mine were growing up. They would have felt like they were being punished if they would take to stay in the house. They would pack their lunch and be gone all day long, down the creek or out in the pasture or something. And
well, don't you think that the opportunities have changed? I mean, is there a creek around here in Katy?
They would have found one. Y'all would watch. You would rather watch one on television, a creek, than to go out and look for one. I mean, maybe
it's so grown up now.
That's right. It's just change. It's just a complete change.
Well,
there's no such thing as a prairie anymore because the houses are taking over the prairies. I mean, the rice fields are being consumed by houses and subdivisions, and it's just not there.
Well, do you resent the fact that Katy's grown?
I don't resent it, but I'm not real happy with it because I feel like that we've lost something. We'll never bring it back. It's gone. But I guess everybody says that's progress, and we have to live with progress. So
So you just think it's inevitable that it will
right?
happen?
Eventually, we would have never seen more than 2 cars or 3 cars in a week go by our house here. And there are at least 150 go by every morning. I mean, you used to go out in your nightgown and get the paper. Now you can't go out in your robe. Distract the traffic. But it's just different. Schools, there are more schools. I resent there being so many students in classes, I think there's a closeness lost in you all having gone to school. I don't think you have the closeness that we did in a class of 30 where you have 300 or 200. Our class of 36 had 39 in it, and we've been close all these years. We still, it was just, everybody was concerned about everybody else in that class. Your classes are so big, you don't know the people. But see, that's just how the town is grown. You can't, that's something you can't help. I mean, I guess that's progress. There's progress again.
Well, what was Katy like in your 20s?
20s?
Yeah, when you were around 20s. You remember back that far?
Probably. It was just a little country town. Everybody, like I said, everybody knew everybody. And
well, what about in your 30s? I'm trying to, what has happened over the years. Because I know it didn't
to
go
grow. I mean, first of all, when Humble came here, that started a bigger development. First, they had their own houses out there. They had their own little community. But they came to our churches, and they came to our stores, and things began to grow. They brought more prosperity to town than just the rice farmer, because that's all there was here. It was the rice farmer and the people in town who had the grocery store and the bulk gasoline station and the drugstore, and we only had one drugstore, and it had been there all these, years. So, and we had one doctor, and we were satisfied with it. I mean, there wasn't anything to be dissatisfied with. We didn't go into Houston to shop. We went to Brookshire to Mr. Max Wander's store, who had a clothing and dry goods store up there, and that's where you got your shoes. He had shoes and clothes.
But did y'all make y'all's clothes?
Mostly, yes.
Did y'all have
I
machines to do?
I didn't. Such as they were. A lot of clothes were made out of feed sacks. You would have your daddy pick out 3 or 4 sacks of feed, that all the sacks were the same material, and then the clothes were made out of some of those. It was real interesting. You got to pick out a real pretty pattern of, chicken feed, and you got to, it didn't have chickens on it, don't get me wrong. They didn't know I like chickens, so.
Well, what was it like living during the Roaring 20s?
The Roaring 20s. Well,
yeah, 1929, something like that.
Well, I was pretty young at that time.
Well, did your parents have?
Well, we had dances that had dances and gatherings at people's houses, and when they had a dance at somebody's house, they took all the furniture out on the lawn and danced in what they called the living room. And then they had the gun club, which everybody belonged to.
What was that?
Well, it was the Bear Creek Gun Club. It was at Addicts, and everybody went every third Sunday. Well, they had a dance there, and they had shooting in the afternoons and barbecues. They had barbecues and gatherings just like they do now, but it was just it was
more relaxed.
Well, right, and it was more people drove for a long ways to come to those gatherings, because they weren't every night. You couldn't go someplace. It was like you looked forward to getting a new dress for a deal that they were going to have at the gun club. And it might be 4th of July when they had a big one, and they had it over at Cypher's, and just different places. The gun clubs, they were called gun clubs, and the men belonged to them, but the women dressed up to go to dances, and we were always taken to these places, even when we were little. Well, we'd go with mom and dad.
Babysitters.
Well, there was no such thing as babysitters then. Everybody went together, and you had one car, so nobody got to use the car unless everybody got to go. After we got cars, there wasn't that much going when we had the team and wagons and buggies.
Well, what's it like living during the Great Depression? Was that a hard times for your family? Or?
It was always hard times for our family because farmers were having a struggle to survive pioneering the rice business. It was real hard. It did not, well, rice farming had not become a great thing here at that time. And it was, I don't remember a whole lot about it. I mean, you know, I know that it was hard times, but I know that eggs and butter and stuff was our only cash. So you take that into the store and that's the cash that we got, you know. I don't remember too much about it. Maybe I was too flighty or something to realize that things were that bad. I don't know.
Well, when you got into high school, what was the schoolwork like? I mean, did you take trig and calculus or?
There was no such thing as calculus. We had the basic school things. We did have Spanish as a foreign language. It was Spanish. There was no German or anything like that. And the Spanish they taught was something I don't think you could use with the Mexicans this day and time. But the school was fun. We played volleyball, we played baseball, and we had county meets. Like, you know, you might have a district meet now, but we had county meets, and if you got to, everybody got to participate because there wasn't that many. Those who wanted to certainly could. Those who wanted to be in the choir or glee club, we called it, or those who wanted to be in plays. In each year, we had a junior play and a senior play and a junior-senior prom, just like you do.
What was the prom like?
Well, it was not a prom proper like you would, but it was a junior-senior banquet. And then, of course, dancing was not just a big thing in Katy, so if you wanted to dance, you had to go to somebody's house to dance. But we had a junior-senior banquet. It was fun to decorate for it. And as the time grew, well, we had the auditorium then, you know, to have it in. Play the girls didn't play basketball, the boys did, but the girls did. They played volleyball and softball and tennis, and that's why I've always wanted to play tennis, because I love to play tennis. But we had fun. We had hay rides. That was the big thing, to have a hay ride and have a team of mules pull the wagon and throw the hay off and do all those things. And you know, then later on there became a tractor that we pulled. Somebody had an old tractor that they would pull the wagons. But hay rides and swimming parties were real popular out of the old rice wells. You know, that was a fun thing.
Well,
and watermelon parties and watermelon fights. Stealing watermelons was a big deal.
You just go to the field and pick up a few watermelons?
It was nothing for a farmer to know that there was going to be a bunch of kids steal watermelons. I mean, you know, it wasn't a sin to do that. It was they just knew that that somebody would be in the watermelon patch.
Well, what was it like when your children were growing up? I mean, was it any, you know, what was the difference between your childhood and their childhood?
Well, it was more modern, let's say that. And then there was a new school, you know, the elementary school, the junior high school was there. The elementary school was still where it was. The junior high school we moved over when Marcia and I guess Wayne's first year in junior high probably was over there. And it began to grow then. More people began to come in. We were getting students then from Brookshire, as we always had students from Brookshire and addicts. And
why were people starting to come in at that time?
well, there were more rice farmers, I guess, at that time that were coming over. And then, of course, Uncle was growing out there, and they were bringing families in to live there. And probably the rice farmers were having more people work for them then, and they were just beginning to grow more. Mm-hmm. The school was probably growing more, little by little. It was it was growing, and it certainly wasn't half as big as when you started. But it was growing, and it as they grew up, it became bigger and bigger, and more people came. We began to get lawyers in town that we hadn't had before, and there were more churches. The churches were beginning to pop up everywhere, and it was just growing. I guess that's progress.
Well, now that your children are grown and you have grandchildren now, what do you think about Katy now, besides it being too big?
I wish I could go back a few years and grow up like my kids grew up in this town.
You don't want your kids to grow up like you grew up?
No, I don't want them to go back that far. But I'd like for my grandkids to grow up like my kids did in this town, where they had fun. We only had 2 cops, and the cops were the kind that would call if you were doing something wrong and say, they're driving too fast, and and everybody was concerned about everybody else's kids. Now that it's so big that you don't know the kids. And I wish it was. I wish it was so that the school was like it was when your mother was growing up. I think she had a ball going to school. You may be having a real good time in school, but her time was different because they knew everybody. I mean, everybody in the class, everybody in the school knew everybody.
Because they had grown up together.
Yes, they had grown up together, and they had fun together, and it wasn't just dating one boy or one girl necessarily. They all had fun together, and they all got together. It was like one big family of kids. And I think you all have missed a lot by not having that association with more people than you do. I really do. I think it would be fun for you all to have done it. Maybe you're happy with the school life that you have right now, but I think
know no other way.
No, I know you know no other way, but you've heard of them sitting around talking about all the fun that they had, and I know Laurel has said a lot of times, why can't we have fun like Mama and Sandy did, going to school. So but you have to grow, and as you grow, you grow out of the things that you used to do.
Well, did you have any other boyfriends before you were married to Papa?
Hey, that's a personal question.
Come on, Ma, come on.
Well, sure. You'd be a pretty bad person if you didn't have boyfriends.
Well,
you always seem to go back to the same one, though. I think that's a real good one. Hey, did you have any other boyfriends? Maybe I'll find out something. Don't let me hear Papa's version of it. How many girlfriends did you have?
Well, what kind of food did y'all eat? I mean, was it Pop-Tarts? I know it wasn't Pop-Tarts. I mean,
it certainly wasn't any fast food things, I'll guarantee.
Not McDonald's or anything like that?
It wasn't anything. Everything was started from scratch. It was basically meat and potatoes and gravy and biscuits and
meat and potatoes.
Right, and rice. Everybody thought that after the rice farmers started in that they ought to have rice at least once a day. And we did have a lot of rice pudding and rice and any way you could fix rice.
500 ways to fix the rice.
A lot of pastry. A lot of people took pride in baking cakes, and if there was a death in somebody's family, everybody took cake, your very special cake that you take, or your very special pie. Or
what's your specialty?
Divinity.
Yeah. Okay.
Gumbo, maybe.
I don't think that's a pie, Mom. Well, how did you keep up with the news and the weather? I mean, did you go outside and say, looks like it's going to rain, or do y'all have radio So the forecast.
Well, a long time ago we didn't have a radio, and a paper maybe once a month, maybe. I don't even remember how they kept up with it. And then eventually they took papers, more papers. I mean, they could, but they weren't delivered maybe once a week you got a paper. Then we got radio. And my daddy was one of the first to get a television, and it was one of those little bitty black and whites, and everybody came over on Friday night to watch the Lone Ranger and wrestling. But there just wasn't a lot of, it was just, we had a party line, and the telephones was on a party line, and everybody had a certain ring, like 3 shorts, and, you know, like 903 or whatever it was called, a 900 line. And people would get on the line, and several rings would mean that somebody needed help or would listen in. A lot of times they would listen in on conversations. That's how the gossip got started, was hearing somebody else talk on the telephone. They also were real helpful, though, because when Dwayne had the croup one time, when Mrs. Morton heard me calling frantically for my mother, and she told me what to do before anybody else could get on the phone. Was she told me over the phone. She had heard me ringing, trying to get them, and she told me what to do. Probably saved him. I don't know. But it was.
Well, how'd y'all keep in contact with the outside world? I mean, outside of Katy and this area. I mean, did you write letters to people up in Oklahoma?
Yes. No, yeah, get with it. I wasn't even thinking what you're talking. Certainly, there was more letter writing then. Even I have a lot of letters. I don't know whether I still have them or not. My grandfather wrote to my mother in German. He spoke very little English. Mm-hmm. And he would write in German, and it would take her maybe all day to translate his letter so she would know what he was talking about. But she did write a lot of letters. We wrote a lot of letters to Houston. Instead of calling, like we pick up the phone now and don't think anything about calling all over the world, probably, or all over the United States. But then you didn't even call into Houston unless it was an emergency. So you wrote a lot of letters into Houston, you know, to your folks that lived in Houston or your folks that lived away from here. Mine was, I had an aunt that lived in Houston, and my other folks lived in Oklahoma. But I have written letters to my brother in Brookshire because they didn't have a phone, and, you know, we wanted to get in contact with them or something. The roads were real bad going up there. Into his place, it was horrible. You'd get stuck going in. So you wrote letters, even from here to Brookshire. Sounds fantastic, doesn't it? Now we don't have time. Time again is the fun. Oh.
Well, can you tell me a little bit about your attitudes at the time? I mean,
What?
Your attitudes, like, towards your parents? Was it a non-questioning attitude, or?
You didn't question.
There
was no, it was a very firm no, meant a very firm no. If you asked Mama and went to ask Daddy, he'd say, "What did she say?" Very, very much so. There was no dickering. No, I'll do it tomorrow, or anything. You did it then. Parents at that particular time, I think, in that way, were very strict, very strong parents. There was, of course, we didn't have a car to run around in, or take off and go anyplace. They didn't punish us that way, because you just had a little extra work. You got up if you got in real late at night, you got up early the next morning, earlier than normal the next morning. That's how you actually was punished, probably, for not doing what you're supposed to do. Question.
Oh, did anybody you know, were they single parents or divorced or anything, or were there just always, you know, the husband, the wife, and the kids? Were there just maybe the wife?
People didn't have time to get divorced. No, I don't know that I recall anybody being a divorced person at that particular time. There were not a lot of working women that worked outside of the home, except
Anyway, go ahead. What were you saying about the women not working?
well, there just wasn't any women working. They worked at a grocery store, but it was because their husband owned the grocery store that they worked. They worked in the drugstore because their husband owned the drugstore. I mean, they worked in the clothing store because they owned the clothing store. It was just a couple's thing for them to do.
Well, what did the wife always do with the husband? You know, want it?
I think mostly they did. They might not have liked it, but they did it.
Yeah.
There wasn't enough money for anybody to leave home and go anyplace else.
Well, I mean, like the husband was, the superior.
I think so. I really do.
They weren't equal at all.
I don't think so at that time.
What about you and Papa?
Well, I never even thought about going to work until later on. You know.
No, I'm not thinking necessarily about the work. I'm thinking about your relationship with him, personally. I mean, like my mom and dad. My mother's the boss, and dad's, following along. But
So I don't think so. I don't think there was either any one of us that was the boss. I mean,
it was just an
I think
equal
it was
sharing.
pretty equal deal.
Okay.
I went to work for him because I wanted to get away from the kids.
That's good.
mercy is on them that fear him, from generation to generation. Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, for he hath visited and redeemed his people. His mercy is on them that fear him, from generation to generation. Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, for he hath visited and redeemed his people.
My soul doth magnify the Lord, doth magnify the Lord, and my spirit doth rejoice, my spirit doth rejoice in God, my and holy is his name, and holy is his name, and
Dinner will be done by God. One, two, one, two.
Sooner we'll be done with the troubles of the world, going home to live with God. Sooner we'll be done with the troubles of the world, the troubles of the world. Sooner we'll be done with the troubles of the world, going home to live with God. I want to meet my mother. 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 Sooner we'll be done with the troubles of the world, troubles of the world, the troubles of the world. Sooner we'll be done with the troubles of the world, going home to live with God. Sooner we'll be done with the troubles of the world, troubles of the world, the troubles of the world. Sooner we'll be done with the troubles of the world, going home to live with God. No more wailing, no more wailing, no more weeping and a wailing. I'm going to live with God. No more wailing, no more wailing, no more wailing, weeping and a wailing, troubles of the world, the troubles of the world. Sooner we'll be done with the troubles of the world, going home to live with God. Sooner we'll be done with the troubles of the world, troubles of the world, the troubles of the world. Sooner we'll be done with the troubles of the world, going home to live with God. I want to meet my Jesus. I
Parate fuera by nota. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Soli solturus creator cos, habitat et humiliores vicit in cielo et in terra. Suscitat a terra, et ut collocit principibus, populis sumi, populis sumi. Qui habitare facit rebellendo patrum filiorum laetatem, iorum laetatem, gloria Patri, Filio. Erat in principio et nunc et semper et in saecula
Rejoice in the Lord. The tape will begin top of page 4, first measure. The voice will enter third measure, top of page 4, and sing the second alto part on page 5.
And sing unto him a new song.
Rejoice in the Lord. Top of page 14, the tape will begin. The voice enters the second measure, singing the second alto part.
Gloria by Zucchini. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Gloria, Gloria, in excelsis Deo. Gloria, 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 in excelsis Deo.
Rejoice
Thank you. Lord